Welcome to Philippine Dress Session 2, which focuses on the emergence of the Philippine Terno. Our objectives for the second session are the following: familiarization with Philippine dress history from the 1900s to the 1930s, identification of some terms relevant to the terno, understanding how the butterfly sleeves are made, and finally, an appreciation of Filipino ingenuity. And these are the basic terms which identify the parts and materials of the terno. Serpentina, a style of saya that widens at the bottom with a semi-circular flounce. Delantal, tapis in the style of an apron with strings. Sobrefalda, overskirt of black tulle or lace. Cola, elongated skirt train. Vestido, the Western dress. Here's a list of some of the materials that are used for the terno. Pinukpok, beaten abaca fabric normally used for the saya. Renge, starch open weave fabric of husi, pineapple, or other fibers. Used for the camisa panuelo ensemble. Babarahin, starch fabric of abaca or cotton from Batangas used for the camisa panuelo ensemble. Kanyamazo, or coarse canvas, interchangeable with the word babarahin, also used for the camisa panuelo ensemble. We begin with the 1900s with the takeover of the American regime from the Spaniards. The Americans introduced sweeping changes, including the educational system, as they brought the Thomasites, who also came with new fashions from the West. The Gibson girl look was characterized by an S curve, defined by a curvaceous chest and backside. The skirts flared with the addition of semi-circular panels, and these were called morning glory skirts, after its namesake flower. In the Philippines, the traje de mestiza slowly transformed into what we call the serpentina silhouette. This was characterized by a panuelo and camisa, which were now top-heavy and made of abaca material. The camisa also featured a front opening and shearing on the neckline. The serpentina skirt had flounces stiffened with sinamay. Sometimes the entire dress would be made out of abaca textile. Here is an example of how a saya from the period is normally constructed. As you can see, the exterior is a printed cotton fabric, while the interior is lined with a stiffer sinamay material to help the skirt ripple and achieve a serpentine form. This is an ingenious solution that also makes use of locally available materials. The bottom of the serpentina skirt was a design opportunity for women who came up with creative ways of cutting the joinery between the upper half and the lower half of the skirt. These serpentina styles included the following, which were named after objects from nature: Rio de Pasig, which referred to the zigzag shape of the Pasig River; La Paloma, a dove shape with wings; Camia, which is basically a floral shape; and Mariposa, a butterfly shape. The 1910s brought about many changes in the West with the onset of World War I and the drive towards modernity. Women were liberated from the corset, which altered their body proportions in order to conform to a certain shape. Orientalism, which stemmed from a fascination for Eastern culture, was introduced by the likes of French designer Paul Poiret. In emulating Oriental dress, which were based on flat patterns that move away from the body, these Western silhouettes relaxed. The Empire line with its high waists also got revived. In the Philippines, the traje de mestiza moved away from the stiffer shape of the serpentina to a more relaxed silhouette. By the late 1910s, the Philippine dress had the following: a panuelo and camisa with sleeves that began to flatten, a sobrefalda made of black tulle or lace, a cola or a train, which could be tongue-shaped like this one in the photo, rectangular shape, fishtail shaped, or a double fishtail shape. Women also carried a porta-abanico, which is basically a fan holder made up of a chain. The Roaring Twenties saw the arrival of jazz music and the emergence of the ternos butterfly sleeves. In the West, dancing to the rhythm of jazz required vigorous arm and foot movement, so a new mode of dress had to be invented, one that was sleeveless and shorter in length. The young women who were associated with this dress were called flappers. In the Philippines, the traje de mestiza underwent a dramatic transformation. The sleeves were not discarded as they were in the West, but they were flattened, giving the effect of butterfly wings. And a designer credited for this innovation was Pasita Longos, the most sought-after designer in 1920s Manila. The move to flatten the sleeves was part of an overhaul that gave the Philippine dress a more streamlined look. Here are some of the changes that occurred in each section of the outfit. A panuelo, now positioned lower at the back, revealing more of the nape. A camisa, which now featured a front opening. A sobrefalda, or an overskirt, duplicating the embroidery of the camisa and the panuelo. And given the embroidery on the sobrefalda, the saya or the saya de cola already had plain material. By the 1920s, when the Philippine dress was referred as a terno, it meant a set comprised of a matching camisa, panuelo, and saya or sobrefalda. The word terno also became synonymous to the idea of matching colors and motifs. Here is an actual example of a terno to remind us that these garments were colored. The camisa on top derived its flowers from the extra material of the saya at the bottom. The flowers are either cut out from the extra textile and appliqued on the kanyamazo, or it is replicated by machine embroidery. For practical reasons, only the visible areas of the panuelo are decorated with the same floral motif. Now there were ethics in dealing with the cola or long train. Here, we see the future First Lady of the Philippine Commonwealth, Aurora Quezon, flanked by two women. Their colas are resting on the ground as they normally would inside a house to receive guests or when they are dancing the Rigodon de Honor. It was considered bad taste to enter a ballroom or church with the cola pinned up to the waist. For other types of dancing, it was advisable to hold the train from its tip with the left hand. While working, it was acceptable to pin the tip of the cola into the waistline with a bar pin. However, some women preferred to sling the cola over their arm. In any case, it was important not to reveal the enaguas or the underskirt underneath too much. By the 1930s, the Philippine Commonwealth was established as a transitional form of government in preparation for independence from the United States. It was also a time when Filipinos struggled to define themselves as a nation and its culture. By the 1930s, the terno was slowly being replaced by the Western dress or vestido. In this editorial cartoon on the front page of the Philippine magazine, we can see a woman in a terno giving a younger lady in a vestido a second glance. It illustrates an ongoing debate about national identity and the sentiments of some women about the impracticalities of the terno in modern life. In Western fashion, French designer Madeleine Vionnet introduced the bias cut dress. Bias cutting meant positioning the fabric on a diagonal instead of being straight, so that it drapes or clings onto the body. Draping, which basically involved a process of working the fabric on a mannequin instead of cutting flat patterns on a table, produced silhouettes that recalled ancient Grecian costumes. Here is an example of how bias cutting affected the terno silhouette in the 1930s. This was a formal dress worn by First Lady Aurora Quezon, which had the following: a panuelo and camisa with matching embellishments, a saya now done in the bias cut, which also had godes or triangular inserts to make the dress flare. As you can see, the cola is a rounded version. Aurora Quezon established a tradition for our first ladies to wear the terno in all official functions. The Philippine dress had appropriate daytime versions that distinguished it from evening versions. Many women, including the teachers who were guests of Mrs. Quezon, wore the terno on a daily basis. It wasn't a mere costume up until then. It was part of daily life as everyday wear. But a Second World War was looming, and everything changed in the next decade. To better appreciate the craft of terno making, it would be good to look at how butterfly sleeves are made. Here are step-by-step instructions for beginners based on the experience of Carolina de Leon, who worked for the CCP's Production Design Center costume shop. Here is a flattened terno sleeve from the 1930s. Back then, women dismantled the sleeve from the camisa for washing and storage to prevent inflicting damage on its form. The sleeves were then restarched, repleated, and resewn by hand onto the armhole of the camisa a tedious process that would be impractical by today's standards. We begin with step 1. The first task is to mark the center line of the sleeve. A sleeve pattern or guide can be placed over the material to serve as a guide for the pleating process. Step 2. Fold the far ends together so that they overlap in the center. You may pin down the center with a head pin. Step 3. Establish a box pleat at the top center. Please note that it's very important that this is centered so that the rest of the pleats become symmetrical. Hold down the pleat with head pins. Step 4. Beginners may then mark both lower ends of the fan-shaped pleating to make sure that the remaining volume is evenly distributed amongst all of the pleats. Do this on both the left and right sides as indicated by the red arrows. Step 5. Now slowly work the pleats from top center down the slope of the sleeve. Step 6. Make sure that each pleat is equidistant from each other. Step 7. After working on the right portion, you can now shift to the left side. Step 8. Repeat the process of pleating until you get to the end. And step 9. If the armhole needs to be wider, then cut from the bottom of the armhole. As much as possible, do not cut from the upper portion so that the height of the mangas from the shoulder is not compromised. Step 10. You can stitch down the area around the armhole before removing the head pins. If you consider the center as one pleat, you should end up with a total of 11 pleats. Some prefer as much as 15 pleats. So there you have it, a finished butterfly sleeve for the terno. Attached is a pattern done on a 1" by 1" grid for those who would like to study the traditional terno sleeve proportions further. Thank you.